does it take a crisis to get people to invest? So if there's any examples where there's been an exception to that, or you've seen an institution or a host country invest in a big data system in the absence of a crisis?
I mean, the recent investment by the European Union on the Food Security Nutrition Surveillance Project was not predicated by any disaster. It was just predicated by the history of surveillance in Bangladesh.
All right. I think we have time for at least one more round. You have plenty there?
Yeah.
More question.
Maybe also one comment on the crisis one. I think the environmental data also offer an opportunity to see sometimes a tipping point coming, but if there is not yet already an anticipation response framework or action framework in place, there is no time anymore to organize it before the crisis. So I think that's why I kind of really emphasize this action framework coupled with the data monitoring framework, like Carol also mentioned.
Can I add a comment to that, which is, we often talk, that was actually one of the points I skipped. I promised 7 points, I only gave you 6, which is aerial photography, satellite imagery, like those are, like you just said, great technology and need to be scaled up in its use. But we need ground truthing of a lot of these things, which a lot of times we take it for granted what a picture from the sky. We work a lot on agriculture statistics, on vegetation change. It's like, we really don't know, like in just whether what we see, like in just it's often a true reflection of what's so particularly in realities like in Africa where you have like just a lot of added difficulties.
One last question.
This question says, behavioral change is one of the main goals and drivers of resilience. How can we measure such a qualitative variable with quantitative tools and indexes?
I guess, do you agree with the premise first, that behavior change is at the heart of resilience, and then how do you measure such a qualitative concept with quantitative tools and indices? I think the first part is worth commenting on. Is behavior change fundamental for resilience?
That's not a measurement question.
My reaction every time I hear one of those is, well, maybe, and isn't that what we need to be testing, right? So then we can get to the second half of how would we measure it if we wanted to test it.
But I think it's, if I may, like you just said, I think probably it's easier to measure behavioral change. I think, but it's more difficult maybe to attribute behavioral changes to something specific, like particular intervention on resilience or whatever. So because of the behavioral change, you see the different actions that different actors that take at different time. The question is what's driving these changes, and to jump to the attribution that it's a specific project or a specific intervention, that's probably more difficult.
Derek, you have something?
Yeah, I don't think we need to say whether it's fundamental or not. It's certainly very important. And I think if we listen to the people who are more specialized in the humanitarian sector, we heard before, they consistently tell us that community resilience is very important, coping mechanisms very important. All that can be described as behavioral change. It's important. And I think that's something that's also maybe missing from some of the standard economic and even nutrition surveys that goes around. And I think Chris and I had in mind that's the sort of thing that would exactly fit into the thick rounds in these kind of sentinel systems. The thick rounds would involve qualitative research, understanding how the community works, understanding power dynamics, and so on.
Actually, on the first point, I think it does require behavioral change, but from us, not necessarily from and I think that's where probably we should work on.
Mark, anything to add?
Yeah, actually, there was a measurement part of that question. There was a second part about how can you measure something that's the qualitative and quantitative terms. And I think that's the part that I was focusing on, and I think that's not a premise that one needs to buy into, in that we're not looking to quantify everything. And what we are looking to draw is, we're looking to draw sound inferences that allow us to support strong and credible knowledge claims. And there, if it's qualitative, that's fine, if it increases our power of inference, and if it allows us to unpack heterogeneity of effects, that is why some households or communities behave differently over time, and why they exhibit different patterns of recovery. And so the qualitative, quantitative part of it is not a problem, actually, for me. So.
Fair enough. All right, we have 1 minute per panelist left to say your final piece, and I think it would be helpful to shift from focusing what's been a largely kind of supply side discussion to thinking about, in order to meet the demand for either greater data evidence around resilience or the tools and guidance needed to get that, what is one step within the next 12 months that each of you thinks is critical for us to take? Jero, I'll start with you.
Over the next 12 months or 12 years? I'm going to say something a little bit counterintuitive, which is in the area I work the most, which is a household survey, so which is only one of this component. To me, a best way to reduce cost is to increase, it seems counterintuitive, is to increase the salaries, is to increase pay scales of people involved in regular data collection. The current system of data collection, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, is broken. So we really need to think how to optimize the resources. And again, counterintuitively, is that by paying more, who does the work? And in the broader perspective, if we look at this thing in a broader perspective, it's really a drop in the bucket. If you think about just that the share that we spend in data, just over overall budget of any country, it's minimal. So we need to move away from the current system and economize it by spending more. By paying more, not spending more.
So my takeaway is Jero needs a raise in the next year, and then we're good. All right. Rosaline?
Yeah, thank you. My point is actually along these lines, but not about money, but more about building the capacity to monitor and to use the data at different levels. And I was just also at the Scaling Up Nutrition workshop on monitoring and evaluation of and using nutrition surveillance. And the key point that came out there that was needed was human capacity to use it and to do it on the ground.
I think one of the things that I would most like to have happen in the next year is to try to figure out more how to integrate the household level data with the community level data with the next level up data. I think that's still a problem, and it really, because resilience is not just a household phenomenon, it's something that I think really needs to be tackled.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to give you one step. I think financial commitments and donor coordination to really doing something ambitious. I think if we just keep waiting and keep going on, it'll just be the status quo, which is not good enough. Second, scale up the kind of technical working group type idea and really get a broad swathe of expertise from really a lot of different disciplines to really think about how we can get increasing returns. Get a system out there that is not only big but will really be used by a lot of people. I think lack of usage has really been the Achilles heel in a lot of previous systems. And then, yes, a process of experimentation. I'm not saying, go for bust, 15 countries or nothing or something like that, but a process of serious experimentation so that in a few years we are in a good position to really scale up.
There are two comments I'd like to make. One is we need to take seriously the cost of imprecision, is our capacity to measure things accurately and to have causal models that actually get things right. And is really important. And when we don't get that right, there's a cost associated with it. Related to the causal models question, I'll just take one more point here, is I think we have a long-standing disconnect between the language and the habits of people who are in the business of developing estimation models where you're predicting something, and you have people who are developing logic models for programming. It's a massive disconnect. And I think we have an opportunity here to hit the reset button with resilience and to rethink and to have greater convergence between what's going on the ground with programmers, because I regularly sit in meetings and the people doing implementations say about the analysts they don't get it, and the analysts say to programmers that they don't get it. And I think neither one is getting it completely. So.
Perfect. All right, and mine in the last 22 seconds is 12 months may be ambitious, but I want to be able to propose a panel at the next big resilience conference on what doesn't contribute to resilience and have something to say about that.